I guess we have a little connection problem. Give us a minute.
I would like to inform everyone that we are going live.
Sorry, there was a technical glitch. As a co-convener of the conference, I would like to take this opportunity to introduce the theme of our conference. The 9th International HR Conference is on positive psychology and modern organizations, Western and Oriental approaches. Positive psychology is the study of conditions and processes that contributes to the optimal functioning of people, groups, and institutions. Positive psychologists are concerned with valued subjective experiences, that is, well-being, contentment, and satisfaction in the past, hope and optimism for the future, and flow and happiness in the present. Indian psychology has also contributed to the movement of positive psychology, drawing heavily from Eastern philosophy and spirituality. Indian psychology proposes that one may regain her inherent freedom by deconstructing the ego and the total absorption of mind through devotion or meditation. The concepts of positive psychology have recently been applied to the study of organizations, focusing on the understanding of what is best in the human conditions. As employees increasingly make work-related decisions on what makes them satisfied and happy, not just financially better off, it is important that organizations act as positive institutions and focus on the development of these positive features, which in turn will lead to better organizational performance. Although there is a considerable amount of work going on in the field of positive psychology, both from the Western and Eastern perspective, there is still a relative paucity of research that applies the positive psychology metaphor directly to organizations and workplace. Our conference aimed to address this imbalance and suggest the potential uses of positive psychology in organizations as a future research agenda. We are honored to have amongst us as the keynote speaker for this conference, Professor Dharm P S Bhawuk, Professor of Management and Culture and Community Psychology at the University of Hawaii, Manoa, USA. Professor Bhawuk will also be conducting the pre-conference workshop on quantitative and qualitative approaches to theory building. We are thrilled to have 3 plenary sessions for this conference. The first plenary session, Harnessing the Power of Emotion for the Future of Leadership, will be conducted by Professor Janki Guti. She is the Associate Professor in the Department of Management in the Bell College of Business, USA. She is also the Associate Editor of the journal, The Leadership Quarterly. Professor John Antonakis will conduct the second plenary session on designing valid and consequential experiments. He is a Professor of Organizational Behavior, Faculty of Business and Economics at the University of Lausanne, Switzerland, and also the Chief Editor of the journal, The Leadership Quarterly. The third plenary session on future of work and leadership organizational psychology will be conducted by Professor Matthijs Baal, Professor of Responsible Management at the Lincoln International Business School, United Kingdom. This will be followed by a panel discussion on contemporary Indian research. We have distinguished professors as panelists from IIT Bombay, TISS, and NITI. They are Professor Ashish Pandey, Professor Zubin Mullah, and Professor Upyashana A. Agarwal. The panel discussion will be moderated by Professor Preeti Rawat, Professor and Director of HR, Somaiya Institute of Management. We have received a substantial number of abstract submissions on positive psychology, and the paper presentations have been grouped into 6 tracks that will be running parallel. We have our track chairs from IIMs and other prestigious B schools. We look forward to an exciting 3-day event. On behalf of the conference conveners, Professor Shiji Linden and me, I would like to thank you all of you for giving us your time.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for introducing the conference for us. Now we have with us the Vice Chancellor of Somaiya Vidya Vihar University, Professor V.N. Rajsekharan Pillai. He has been at the helm of affairs of many higher educational and scientific research establishments. For the last 47 years of service as a teacher, researcher, professor, and executive head of education, science, and technology establishments in the country and abroad. We request you, sir, to address the audience with a few words.
Good morning, everybody. Let me thank the organizers for extending me an invitation to participate in the 9th International HR Conference 2022 with the theme Positive Psychology and Modern Organizations. I take this opportunity to congratulate the Department of HR and the KJ Somaiya Institute of Management and the National Organizing Committee for arranging a very well thought out conference program. I am also glad that a good number of eminent experts in positive psychology and management in general are participating from abroad and India and sharing their insights on this subject. I am extremely glad that the KJ Somaiya Institute of Management, which is a premier research institution under the Somaiya Vidya Vihar umbrella, has been focusing on research in a very objective way. This conference, I understand that is the 9th in the series, this international conference, and you have carried out, you have taken up different topics which are relevant, which are timely during the last several years. Even during this pandemic period, through technology, you are trying to network with people and interact with academics in promoting knowledge and capabilities and research in this area. That itself is, that type of attitude itself is an example of positive psychology. We thought during this pandemic period, we will all be isolated, but we are not isolated. We are getting more and more connected. We are trying to get individually more connected, institutionally more connected. And this is definitely the basic principle of positive psychology itself. When we say positive psychology, it is the science of well-being. Well-being of not just individuals, well-being of institutions, well-being of the nation, well-being of the society, the universe as a whole. The prayer which we recited just now, that we pray for the happiness for everybody. Happiness for, not happiness for the human beings, happiness for the other beings, happiness for even the non-living things. So it shows that the dynamism we see in the world is because of the positive interventions, positive interactions with each and every component in the universe. Of course, we know about this universe in a very, very limited way, because we don't even know a minuscule percentage of what is happening in this universe. But even within that, our knowledge of the universe, our knowledge of the nations, the world, we are trying to be happy. Actually, when we say the science of happiness, there are also governments, national institutions coming up with happiness index and all that. We all know that Bhutan was the first country in the world to create a happiness index in this part. And now it is universally accepted. When we say Bhutan, that of course also covers one major consideration of your today's topic, that is the positive psychology, looking at the Western and Oriental approaches. When we think about Western approaches, positive psychology as a discipline, which has emerged in around 1998 or so, with that famous book by distinguished author. But even, of course, even before that, we were thinking about positive psychology and positive interventions. When we say it is definitely about the quality of life. Positive interventions are necessary for enhancing the quality of life. Quality of life is not livelihood alone. Life in its entirety, life of not just the mankind, life of the universe. So it is the material happiness, emotional well-being, physical well-being. All these things are part of happiness. And of course, now we see that the World Happiness Indices are there. United Nations Sustainable Development Program mentions about this happiness and well-being. So what are the things which are necessary to look at this positive psychology for effective interventions in organizational management? We probably have to think about the positive subjective experience, positive individual traits, positive institutional features. All these things contribute. Ultimately, the interconnections between the institutions are created by connections among individuals. And there is also saying that an institution is the lengthened shadow of an individual, depending upon the individual. So every individual, every component. Of course, when we say the whole universe, it is not just the human individuals only. The whole universe, the earth, our surroundings, our environment, our ecosystems. These are all necessary for creating positive interventions and positive feelings in life. We really experience it. We go to a different ambience and experience the wellness feeling. So, of course, now we fragment the wellness into different aspects, maybe the physical wellness, material wellness, then emotional wellness and all that. But ultimately, there is a happiness quotient which is arising out of the permutations and combinations of all these different types of indices. I was just looking at the World Happiness Indices. Now, of course, Helsinki is the country. It's a small country. That is where the happiness is maximum. The positive psychology. There are large number of case studies of Helsinki's interventions in making people positive in their thinking. And it is very important that we should look at these things in an organized way, with a research mind, with analytical interventions into the whole field. It is definitely earlier psychological interventions to treat the mental illness. Now it is in positive interventions or positive psychology. What I am given to understand is that we are looking at it in a positive way, and then trying to build systems and practices in place where such positive interactions between individuals, among individuals and institutions, individuals and the nation, individuals and the whole society is happening. This is very important. I'm very sure that the type of deliberations which are going to happen during the next 3 days will make a way for better functioning of organizations. And of course, when we say positive interventions, we have to just look at the context of the society. Of course, I mentioned about 2 countries, the Bhutan and Helsinki. Bhutan started this. And in India, there are certain state governments started Department of Happiness, Government Department of Happiness. Madhya Pradesh was the first state in the country to create a Department of Happiness, Government Department of Happiness, that is Administrative Department of Happiness. How such positive psychology and quality of quality of life can be integrated into all our activities. In Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur, there is a chair for human happiness and positive psychology donated by a Canadian NRI, and so it is a chair for positive psychology and happiness in IIT Kharagpur. So it is very important that this principle has to be integrated not just as departments or units or anything, but we have to just integrate this concept into our behavioral pattern itself. Looking things in a positive perspective, and we have to be some sort of an optimistic approach in dealing with all the things, and that is the way to inculcate the positive culture in positive psychological culture in our institutions and in our behavioral patterns. It would be definitely a good opportunity for students, the management students, the researchers in management, to understand this thing and involve themselves into real practical applications of the concepts of positive psychology. And I also welcome the eminent experts from keynote speakers and the eminent experts from various institutions to the Somaiya Vidyavihara University, which is a comprehensive multi-faculty university. And we are proud that our premier teaching and research institution, KJ Somaiya Institute of Management, is engaged in research in a very significant way in all aspects of management, and HR is one of the major departments in this institution, and they are regularly involved in quality research and teaching interventions, which give us credibility, much more credibility as a university. Let me congratulate each and every one of the organizers for organizing such an event and getting our institution known nationally and internationally in all academic interventions. Congratulations to everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your enlightening thoughts and views. It is indeed a great opportunity for us to learn from this conference. Your views on positive psychology will surely help us have a better approach towards life at our workspaces, and more importantly, in our personal space, and guide us in reflecting upon our way of living it. Your words of wisdom will always help us to set the direction to perceive excellence. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. All the best.
Thank you, sir. Moving ahead, I would like to invite the director of KJ Somaiya Institute of Management, Dr. Monica Khanna. She is the member of the Academic Board of Management, Finance Committee, Board for Research and Consultancy at the Somaiya Vidyavihara University. She's an expert academician in the field of marketing and international business with over 29 years of experience with specializations including brand management, service marketing, and marketing management. Ma'am, I urge you to share your insights with the audience.
Ma'am, we are on mute.
Thank you so much for your warm introduction. And on behalf of the Somaiya Vidyavihara University and on my personal behalf, I would like to congratulate the organizers, the organizing committee for the 9th International HR Conference. The theme that you all have chosen for this year, Positive Psychology and Modern Organizations, Western and Oriental Approaches, I thought it was really very timely, and it merits the attention of academicians, industry professionals, and researchers. So while I was thinking about what I'm supposed to speak on positive psychology and modern organizations, what thought that came to my mind was that positive psychology requires positive thinking, and it requires the positive thinker. So I tried to just Google search some quotes or some eminent people who have said something about positive psychology or positive thinking and positive thinkers. And I came across a very interesting quote by Winston Churchill, of all the people. And he said, "The positive thinker sees the invisible, feels the intangible, and achieves the impossible." So I thought this was really very, very appropriate to start my small speech in this conference. What we see today is that modern organizations have evolved from agrarian societies, beginning from the Industrial Revolution some 200 years ago. In today's context of Industry 4.0, with its organizations being centered around automation and human-computer interfaces across geographies, we actually have boundaryless organizations. One can see various new forms of organization structures defined by platform-based businesses, the startup culture, the hybrid teams, hollow organizations, and so on. However, what I thought was the underlying emotions that employees bring to their workplace still remain the same. The most important emotions employees should carry with them to the workplace are feelings of positivity and well-being, which in turn leads to a sense of engagement with the organization, self-accomplishments and achievements for the self and for the organization. Organizations are honestly living organisms themselves, because there are employees who are working in these organizations, and they get affected by not only the external environmental forces, but also the overpowering employee emotions. If the maximum waking hours of an employee are spent in organizational engagement through work and interacting with colleagues, then these emotions become very important in defining the culture of the organization and its employees' morale. Organization cultures can range from punitive cultures to very positive cultures, but a conscious effort has to be made to maintain a positive workplace culture and psychology among employees. And here the role and mindset of leadership becomes very important in setting the right environment and the right positive psychology at the workplace. A lot of organization stress and negative energy buildup can be avoided if there are conscious attempts to maintain a positive workplace culture, but without losing sight of the overall organizational objectives. A happy workforce does not mean a complacent one, but one that can handle various complexities with maturity and equanimity. Emotions are infectious and contagious. The new talent that gets absorbed into the organization would also align their thinking and emotions with the overpowering workplace emotions and further propagate the group attitude in terms of positive or negative group psychology. So it is really important to create platforms within the organization where employees can engage with each other in multidisciplinary teams, encourage employees to genuinely get together to build camaraderie and a collaborative rather than a very cutthroat competitive organizational culture. The value and importance of being positive must be consciously informed to employees. There has to be the human touch in the digital environment, and employees must feel the personal engagement and sense of being a valued member of the organization. Organizations have become very vulnerable due to high competition and disruptions in the business environment. The importance of maintaining a positive psychology of the employee workforce is more than necessary in today's context. There's a very apt quote by leading psychologist Viktor Frankl. He's a Holocaust survivor, and he states that everything can be taken from a man, but the last of the human freedoms to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances cannot be taken away from the person. So maintaining a positive psychology has to be consciously ingrained into the mindset of the employees. One must choose to be positive, as that is the way to personal and professional growth, well-being, and happiness. So I really do think the theme of the 9th International HR Conference, Positive Psychology and Modern Organizations, Western and Oriental Approaches, is really very timely and merits really a lot of discussion and debates. And what I understand from the organizers is that there are many interesting research paper abstracts that you all have received, and these will be presented during the conference in the next 3 days. I'm really very happy that there will be so much opportunity for peer learning and self-development. And there are workshops and discussions that are being conducted by illustrious academicians, and these will further add value to the conference takeaways. So finally, I would like to congratulate once again the organizing committee and end on a note of positivity and hope for the future of positive psychology and modern organization cultures. I warmly welcome all the conference delegates to the 9th International HR Conference being organized by the HR Department of KJ Somaiya Institute of Management, a constituent institute of the Somaiya Vidya Vihar University. I'm sure it's going to get better and better in the years to come. And the 10th edition of the conference, of the HR conference, will be truly much more brighter, better, and much bigger. So wish you all the very best and happy learning and happy debating. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your insightful thoughts and addressing our audience. Your views on importance of quality of organizational culture and importance of a happy workforce is surely something that will guide us all in our corporate careers. Now, I invite Professor Shailja Karve, Chairperson OB HR area. She has also been the chairperson of the admission committee since 2015. Ma'am has done her master's in arts from Mumbai University, master's in personnel management from Symbiosis Institute of Management, and her PhD from NITI Mumbai. Ma'am has close to 37 years of academic experience and has been a part of numerous research papers. She is also the co-author of the book Role Stress and Coping with Role Stress as Influencers of Role Efficacy. Welcome, ma'am. We request you to address our audience.
Thank you. And on behalf of the HR department, the conference organizers, and all my colleagues and the Humanist team, I welcome you to the 9th HR International Conference. As the pandemic slowly carries forward its journey to enter the endemic phase, it's time to reflect on the past 2 years. It was a time of patience, of learning, a time for maturing, and a time for reflection. It was a testing time to be emotionally strong and emerge stronger as humans and as professionals. Many amongst us faced personal losses, as also faced economic crisis. The world faced a churn. Each and every living organism, whether it be from the plant or the animal kingdom, faced the impact of the pandemic. Today, as the world moves forwards towards repair and reconstruction, we as HR professionals thought of this as an apt theme for this year. From individuals to organizations, from organizations to nations, worldwide, positive psychology covers the movement from the negative side of human nature to its positive aspects, and is a study of what makes life most worth living, giving a flip to the human side of organization and workplaces. There is a considerable amount of work happening in the field across the world and here. We can re-emphasize on the influence and contribution of Indian philosophy and spirituality. The focus is on positive events and influences in life, positive relationships, positive experiences like happiness, joy, inspiration, love, positive enduring psychological states and traits like gratitude, resilience, compassion, positive institutions applying positive principles within the entire organization to each and every constituent of the organization. This conference aims to showcase the contemporary ongoing research in the field and suggest the potential uses of positive psychology in organizations as a future research agenda. Let's together explore how positive psychology relates to organizations and the workplaces and look at ways it can be applied not only as a remedy for problems, but as a basis for making our work, studies, and personal lives more satisfying and fulfilling. Taking from VC Sir's address of the Happiness Index and Director Ma'am's address on what is positive psychology and creating leadership who will foster positive psychology, I invite you to find delight through mindful living, and creating positive spaces in all your aspects, whether it is personal or professional lives. Please join me along with each and every member of KG Somaiya Institute of Management, as well as Somaiya Vidya Vihar University under the Chancellor Sri Somaiya, Vice Chancellor Professor Pillai, Director Monica Khanna, my ex-head who conceived of this idea, Professor Preeti Rawat, and my colleagues and the entire Humanist team for a 3 days debate and exchange of happiness and positive ideas. Thank you once again to the Humanist team for inviting me.
Thank you, ma'am, for your motivating thoughts and inspiring words. It has been a beautiful journey so far, 9 years into it, and many more to come. And we are delighted to be a part of this year's conference.
Now we are delighted to have with us Professor Dharm P S Bhawuk to deliver the keynote address for the conference. He is a professor of management and culture and community psychology at the University of Hawaii at Manoa, USA. He has done his BTech in mechanical engineering from IIT Kharagpur. He is an MBA from the University of Hawaii and holds a PhD from the University of Illinois. He is the author of the book Indian Psychology, Lessons from the Bhagavad Gita, and is also the co-editor of the books Cambridge Handbook of Intercultural Training, Barriers and Opportunities at the Base of the Pyramid, and Asian Contributions to Cross-Cultural Psychology. Sir has published more than 100 papers and book chapters and made over 250 presentations internationally. Professor Bhavuk's research interests include indigenous psychology and management and cross-cultural training. We welcome you, sir. I request you to take the conference ahead with the keynote address.
Thank you very much. Can I screen share now? I'm not allowed to screen share.
So one moment, we will allow that.
Oh, please check now.
Can you see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So everybody, please close your eyes for a minute of reflection so that we can all connect from wherever you are. I'm going to do the same. Let's assemble. Thank you very much for the kind words. And in the next 40 minutes, I'll share some of my thoughts about Indian positive psychology and positive psychology in India. So this is a play of word, but I hope you see the point I'll try to make. And also, there are moments of convergence, but there's also need for divergence. So if you only keep checking convergence, probably we would not be doing ourselves a service. I'll start with the conference theme and a little bit about Western positive psychology. People have already shared enough that probably I'll be able to launch on that. So I basically want to talk about 4 things. So I'm not counting that conference theme and Western positive psychology. Indian worldview is positive in its fundamental way of looking at the universe. So let's build on it. Let's not neglect it. Let's build indigenous positive psychological constructs. Just to name a few: Atman, Nishkam, Karma, Lok Sangraha, Shraddha, Yajna, Dan, Tapas, Adhyatma, Lajam. Some of these I have written about, and there are a host of others that await our commitment and service to discovering and reformalizing and bringing to light. Let's build indigenous models of positive psychology. So I will share 1 or 2 models. And then finally, I would like to talk about we should build on the Daivik and Asurik Sampadas because it offers an integrated theoretical framework. It actually preemptively addresses the criticism of positive psychology that it only talks about positive. So that is the agenda, and well, those of you who are going to miss some of it, you'll remember what you missed. So our theme is positive psychology and modern organizations, Western and Oriental approaches. So I will not talk about the Western approaches. I'll primarily talk about Indian approaches. And I will also focus more on the individual. And the foundation or the assumption of that is, if every individual strives for positive living, then the organization that will emerge from those employees will inevitably be striving for positive outcomes. If everybody is positive, then it's difficult to get negative out of it. And I'm sure there would be situations we can think about, but those could be probably addressed individually. So that's my basic position, that if each of us acted and lived a positive life, a positive organization will result, because we will strive to create positive policies or policies that would help people. So briefly, I'm not going to talk about organizations. I'm going to talk about individual level psychology and how that would then lead us at the organization and national level. Briefly about the Western approach, think about the famous founding father of positive psychology, not Martin Seligman, but he builds on the work of Abraham Maslow. And even as a young student, when I was exposed to Maslow, I always thought there was something missing. Maslow stops at self-actualization. We start with self-realization. The gap is not small. So it is plausible that Maslow's model and other Western models will basically be limited to the social domain So there may be social psychological aspects, even when we reflect on the individual. Let's take up a few examples. So the late Diener has created a body of literature on subjective well-being, which is happiness. Now, reflect on happiness in Indian languages. So what does happiness mean? Does it mean sukh? Does it mean anand? Does it mean shanti? What is happiness? Now you can see the moment we start thinking in our own language and bring our own cultural knowledge to dwell on a construct that is coming from the West or from anywhere, we start seeing a perspective that is missing. If you are in Mumbai, right? Somebody can answer that.
Yes.
Thank you. Just making sure before I make a mistake. So since you are in Mumbai, you are influenced by our film industry there. And if you were to look at, think about it. Dukh ke andar sukh ki jyoti, dukh hi sukh ka gyan, dukh hi sukh ka gyan. Do you think you will ever come to this perspective in any of the subjective well-being literature? This is not a small insight. This is our worldview. And that is why it is important to think from our own perspective. So convergence, we will study happiness, but we will study it as sukh. We will study it as anand. When we think about anand, then probably we'll immediately think through correlation of Sat Chit Anand. And right there, the whole perspective becomes different. And if a person is pursuing Sat Chit Anand, then Maslow's hierarchy suddenly becomes an interesting way of looking at the world. So this is my second day of fasting. So I'm going to fast for the next 8 days also. This is the Gupta Navratri. You have to be crazy to fast for 10 days. That's your physiological need that you are denying. That's the foundation of Maslow. If our physiological needs are met, only then we move up. I'm trying to deny myself of my physiological need to move up. That's a different perspective. So please, use this as an example to reflect on. So whenever we converge, we should always bring the divergence. That's basically my theme here, my approach. So let's not quickly converge to miss out a perspective that our culture provides. I won't read the quote, it's from the brochure, but the basic idea is that positive psychology is moving the Western psychology from illness to wellness, from negative to positive. So please keep in mind to think about happiness or psychology itself. The West is moving from negative to positive. So if we want to do scientific research just like the West, we will have to move to negative and then move to positive. But we are already starting from a positive. So in our worldview, we need to pursue Shanti by going beyond Sukha and Dukha. And that is why the Indian film industry sings Dukh ke andar sukh ki jyoti. You have to balance the two. And that is what Samatva is. We'll talk about that. Positive psychology takes us through the countryside of pleasure. And so, we move to the peaks of lasting fulfillment. Purushartha basically is focused towards a meaningful life. There is a big confusion among Indians, among all of us, and that is guided by the past 240 years of poverty of India, which was caused by the British. This is a historical fact. Up to 1760, India was the first world, if you want to use that language, first world, second world, third world. India was the first world. It produced more than 25% of the world GDP. So if we think that we have to learn about managing wealth from the West, it is a myopic 240-year-old view. Culturally, we were wired to deal with wealth. And that is why in Purushartha, we talk about dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. We are not forgetting kamana, desire. That is the rajas, when you think about the gunas, that propels us into anything. We have never forgotten that. All we have done is we have said that everything needs to be guided by dharma, which of course we have now criminally translated as religion and done disservice to the entire worldview and culture. So our kamana and artha is to be guided by dharma. Sri Krishna in Bhagavad Gita says, desires that are following the dharma, that's Krishna himself. So we are not against desires. We are not against wealth. We were the wealthiest nation. And if you look at since I said 240 years, 1760, then people will say that, oh, we learned it from the Iranians and the Middle Easterners. So I would say just go back in time to 1000 AD and the time before Jesus was born. And then India produced 30% of world GDP without any interaction with the world. Before Alexander, the so-called great, came, he was one of my early heroes. India was already the first world. The Romans complained about losing resource money to India because of the fine Indian cotton. So we do not need to become myopic and think that we do not have a worldview, we do not have a cultural understanding of addressing wealth and wealth creation. We created wealth as a nation before Adam Smith could dream about creation of wealth. That's how old our understanding of human psychology and business is. Dr. Seligman talks about karma, positive emotion, engagement, relationship, meaning and purpose and accomplishment. And towards the end, I won't get into it, but you'd get an idea about how the Indian constructs and models actually go beyond them. And these would probably be limited in the social domain only. And the same thing will apply to Fred Luton's chose, confidence, hope, optimism, subjective well-being, and emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence, at least Goldman has an understanding of Indian culture. So I think he understood it in depth, but once you translate it into English language, it does get messed up. So emotional intelligence could also be said to be a oxymoron, because intelligence is cognitive and emotion is, and cognition don't merge in Western psychology. But in the Indian worldview, the idea of tapas captures more than emotional intelligence. Every musician does tapas. Every dancer does tapas. Every sports person does tapas. Watch the film Dangal again, and you will see the tapas of the two young girls and the father and the rules he was willing to break. A vegetarian becoming non-vegetarian. So, do you want to use tapas to understand the phenomena, or do you want to use emotional intelligence? We need to be at least open to it. So I think that is my brief dwelling on Western approaches. So, Professor Pillai mentioned 1998 as the birth of positive psychology. So, I mean, there is awakening in Western psychology, and we have a beautiful saying, "Jab jago tabhi savera." So the West is waking up, but we don't have to go to sleep to wake up with them. We have been awake for a long time when it comes to understanding positive living. Do keep in mind, why are Indian constructs missing in the Western literature? And so here we have the colonization of ideas, and something that the editor does not understand is naturally not worthwhile. And one of my colleagues had data from Turkey, and the reviewers said, "Why Turkish data? Do you ever ask why American data?" Most of positive psychology is built on sophomore students in the United States of America, and we think that's universal. As a cross-cultural psychologist, I learned early on. So, I call myself second generation cross-cultural psychologist. I don't apologize for doing cross-cultural research, but the mainstream people just totally miss it. So they will do 2 studies internationally and they think it's all generalizable. Think about it. Forget about all other Indian constructs. Why is even ahimsa missing in the Handbook of Positive Psychology? This is in the 3rd, 4th edition. Ahimsa has been used in the West, in the United States of America by Martin Luther King Jr. It has been used in South Africa. This is an international phenomenon. Why is this not in the literature? You think about it and hopefully get inspired to put in the effort that is needed. Okay, so now I have 20 minutes to talk about Indian psychology. So the first thing, positive worldview. India provides positive worldview. Why positive worldview? Why is it important? Because in the West, we have gone from misery towards happiness. Peace is not having war. If you look in the history of peace literature in the West, after the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the physicists jag gaye, savera ho gaya. They were awakened that the world is on the brink of destruction. So that's when people started thinking about peace. Compare that with Om Deoha Shanti Rantariksha Gum Shanti Prithivi Shanti Rapaha Shanti Roshadaya Shanti Vanaspataya Shanti Vishvedeva Shanti Brahma Shanti Sarvagum Shanti Shanti Reva Shanti Sama Shanti Redhi Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. How old is that? You must be crazy to think about everything in the universe and pray for peace. So that's where the worldview comes. It is important to remember the worldview of India, Indian culture is positive. So let's go to the Vedas. The Yajur Veda, so people refer to it as Ishopanishad, which is the last chapter of the Yajur Veda. So this is, you can get into intellectual discourse. This is, if you want to say, I don't want to use the word Upanishads, I don't know who started it when. I don't want to use the word Vedant. Let's go to the Vedas. Then this is in the Vedas. And actually, the opening session, this shloka was sung. So the universe is permeated by that. And that is the controller of the universe, the divine. However you want to look at it, we often define it as that because it cannot be described by words. So we use words to go beyond words. That's a positive approach, using words to go beyond words. So, Isha vasyam idam sarvam yatkincha jagatyam jagat tena tyaktena bhunjitha ma gridha kasya sviddhana. I mean, imagine in the Vedic time, somebody is also giving you a warning, ma gridha, don't covet, don't be greedy. Kasya sviddhanam, whose is wealth? And this is the materialistic time when you think about it. So people had to have insight. And again, this is not a poor man's philosophy. India was a wealthy country. So people did see wealth and did say, wait a minute, put your feet on brake. Kasya sviddhanam. But the basic idea here is when that sublime, supreme Brahman permeates everything, covers everything, how can anything be negative? That's my point. And this, you may have to go to Kashmir Shaivism, you may have to go different Vedanta, but this is accepted. This is our foundation. So everything is positive. If you doubt, then the Rishi comes back, and in the 5th verse of the same section of same chapter of Yajurveda says, Tadejati tannaijati taddure tadvantike tadantarasya sarvasya tadu sarvasyasya bahyatah. That moves, does not move, that is far, and that is very near. Look at using word to go beyond word. Moves, does not move. In the West, we would call that oxymoron. But oxymoron has some, understanding value, it seems. Something that is far, something that is near, that is within everything. Tadantarasya sarvasya, tadu sarvasyasya bhayata, and that is outside. How can anything be negative? And then if the person is still confused, then 2 sets of 3 verses come. So 9, 10, 11, and 12, 13, 14. Andham tamaha pravishanti ye vidyam upasate tato bhuya ivate tamo ya u vidyayam rataha annadevahu vidyaya annadahu avidyaya itishu shrumadhiranam yenasta vichachakshire vidyangcha yastu dvedo bhayam saha avidyayamrityum tirtva vidyayamritam ashnute. So those of us who understand as Indian vidya and avidya, the wise one is saying that we need to use both vidya and avidya. Even ignorance has value. Ignorance will come as an asuri pravriti. So even ignorance has value. And it says in this first word, those who pursue vidya are worse than those who pursue avidya. So you go figure what we are trying to say. So everything is permeated by divine, and we need to use both vidya and avidya, both sambhuti and asambhuti will come in 12, 13, 14. So the point is everything is positive. So the Vedic wisdom, to summarize, all is pervaded by that, so all is positive. Positive vidya and negative avidya are both to be utilized. And then, we have other wise sayings, aham brahmasmi, soham prajnanam brahma, I am atma brahma. All of that is telling us that our core is positive. And remember, once I have understood who I am, done. Close this seminar, get out of here. We don't need to talk. You don't need to pay the tuition of your university. You're done. So we are positive to begin with. The negativity is confusion. You can use different metaphors. So it's mala. We need to clean it. It's a mirror that needs to be cleaned so that we see ourselves. Or we have collected a lot of rust. If you clean that, then the magnet will pull us. Naturally, we have a natural inclination, tendency to be connected to the divine, to the universal. I am the universe. I am that. You are the universe. You are that. Our worldview provides us that positive foundation. Okay, the Vedas are old, so let's go to the summary of the Vedas and let's go to Bhagavad Gita. And we find the same idea expressed in different ways. Sri Krishna says, Na sato vidyate bhavo, na bhavo vidyate sataha, ubhayorapi drishtah antahatu, anuyoho tattvadarshivih. There is no absence of truth or presence of untruth. I mean, how much positivity do you want? There is no absence of truth. Sat is always there. Asat is not present. But ubhayoho api drishtah antatu, by seeing both, you go beyond it. So this harmonizing of duality, of is and not is, of is there and is not there, is an Indian methodology. That's positive psychology. But that's for everybody to practice. Sri Krishna is even kinder and more firm. He says in 240, Na iha abhikramanasho asti pratyavayo na vidyate swalpam api asya dharmasya. My PowerPoint is blocked. Trayate mahato bhayat. So there is no loss of effort or any side effect. Every medicine has a side effect. When you do farming, there is side effect. That is why the Jain monks cover their face. They don't want to hurt anybody. Breathing kills people, other things. So there is side effect. So what does Sri Krishna say? There is no loss of effort. Avikramanasha is not there. And there is no side effect. And a little bit of this dharma, karma yoga, gets over the fear of birth and death and all kinds of fear. What could be more positive? Whatever we do, if we do it, with understanding, it's going to help us. There is no loss. Later, Arjuna asks, what if I pursue this path? Will I miss out on this world? And Sri Krishna comes out vehemently and says, no, that's not going to happen. Parth naiveha namutra vinashah tasya vidyate nahi kalyana kritakashchit durgating tata gacchati. So he says, there is no loss here or beyond. So don't worry. Keep doing your positive stuff. There is no reason for concern. Further in the 9th canto, he says, Shipram bhavati dharmatma shastvata shanting nigacchati kaunteya pratijanihi na me bhaktah pranashyati. A devotee, a practitioner, a jnani, you can use the devotee for proxy of everybody else, is never going to be lost or destroyed. Positive effort never goes to waste. So a devotee soon becomes noble and attains lasting peace. Sorry. And we can keep this in the context of the two verses that have appeared earlier in 5th canto, 5:14 and 5:15. And that's another, beautiful worldview. Na kartitwang na karmani lokasya sriyati prabhuhu na karm phala samyogam swabhavastu pravartate. So God does not take side. It's our own nature that prevails. What does that tell us? There is need for us to take action. And that is why sadhana is an important concept. And sadhana is not only for yogis. It is for the musician. It is for the student. It is for the housewife or homemaker. It is for the parents. It is for the, I already said students. It's for the dancer. It is for the wrestler. It's for all sports people. Sadhana is important. Tapas is important. So there is agency. We must take action ourselves. And in 5:15, Sri Krishna says, Na datte kasya chitapapang na chaiva sukritam vibhu agnyanena avritam jnanam tena muhyati jantavah. God does not create virtue or sin. Ignorance is the cause of confusion. And our life's objective is to get rid of ignorance, and that would help us. Or maybe I should have only talked about positive worldview, but let's see, in 7-8 minutes, I can try to go through the other ideas. There is need for us to recognize indigenous constructs. And I think most of you will understand the words as I mention it. So Brihadaranyaka Upanishad gives us Tadet tat trayam shiksheda damam danam dayam iti. So 3 things we should teach. Now these 3 things will come back as the 26, as part of the 26 virtues in the Bhagavad Gita. So we do not need to delve into them at this point. But the point is, these would be constructs that we should study. We should not think Dhamma or Dhamman is a negative thing. That's self-control. That's what that marshmallow experiment that Walter Mischel conducted in the 60s refers to. Can you control your senses when there are temptations? If you control, you will get 2 chocolates, 2 marshmallows. If you don't control, you only get 1. Can you control? So Dhamma is important. Atman, so Bhagavad Gita describes Atman. Bhagavad Gita talks a lot about Swadharma. Nishkam Karma or Karma Yoga is a method. Samatvam Yoga Uchyate. So Samatva is a construct. What's her name? She has written a paper on Samatvam. I'll get her name. Yoga Karmashu Kaushalam. Sthit Pragya. Lok Sangraha. And some of this I have written about. So Lok Sangraha I have written about. Yajna. The Bhagavad Gita is filled with this. Abhyas and Vairagya. These are the 2 methods that Sri Krishna tells Arjuna that is needed. Shraddha, I've written a paper on it. Dhriti Utsah Samanvita. I have a practice of meditation and japa and etc. And I fast. So when I get very inspired, I kind of withdraw from the world. And then I'm reminded of 18.26. So Sri Krishna said, Sattvic karma is dhriti utsah samanvita. So I must have utsah. So that's the rajas part of it. But that is needed. So it's, if you start withdrawing from the world, for sattvic karma, you need that fuel. So that's what utsah is. If you think about Hanumanji, when he does not find Sitaji in Lanka, he loses utsah and then he self-talks. So if you go to Valmiki Ramayana, you will see how somebody who we glorify as ultimate. Hanumanji actually suffers himself when he does not find, and he has looked all over Lanka. Then he has to self-talk himself that I can't give up. I need to think positive. I need utsaha to do my job. Swe swe karmani abhirata. So this is related to Swadharma, involved in our own work. So Atman was a concept. So you can see now this I'm sharing only because it helps us understand that in the Indian worldview, we are never limited, never, to only the metaphysical. So even when we talk about Atman, we talk about Buddhi, we talk about Ahankar, we talk about Manas, we talk about the sense organs, we talk about the Karmendriya, we talk about physical self, social self. Nothing is lost. If you chant Adi Shankara's Nirvana Shatakam, you will see he says, I'm not this, I'm not this, I'm not this, so I'm not mother, I'm not father, I'm not the physical body. And who I am? I'm, of course, Satchidanand. So this Shivoham, Shivoham. So in Indian worldview, there is always the physical. We never lose that, because that is the foundation of our self. But we are not only physical self. Western psychology stops at social self. And I've done work on independent self, interdependent self. But there is also a self that is beyond social self, beyond physical self. You don't need to translate Buddhi into intellect. In all Indian languages, Buddhi is Buddhi. You don't need to translate Manas into mind. In all Indian languages, Manas is understood. And so with Atma and Ahankar. So these are Indian ideas that we can use. Now, what is interesting here is Manas is the center of thinking, feeling, and action. And in the Western psychology, thinking and feeling are separate. So in Indian psychology, we have an integration of all three. And I went to University of Illinois, and I am a great admirer of theory of reasoned action, which is a theory of karma. It took me 20 years to understand. Theory of reasoned action is a theory of karma. But behavioral intention is what we call sankalpa. Sankalpa is the beginning of all action. Why do we need to talk about behavioral intention when we have such a powerful construct called sankalpa? And you go to the, that's my warning about time. And if we go to the Vedas, we see that there are 6 verses in praise of Manasa, Tanme Manaha Shiva Sankalpa Mastu. So this is an old idea. We personify Manas, because if your Manas is not in control, we are not going to be able to do anything. So we do not need to think about theory of reasoned action and behavioral intention. We can think about Sankalpa, and that will help us understand. And Sankalpa itself is a positive construct. There are indigenous models, so paths for leading a harmonious life. So Jnana Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga. To the Indian audience, I don't need to explain this. At least you have a basic idea. And all of that basically leads to self-realization. So therefore, each of them are sadhana path, and each of them basically help us attain peace and tranquility. So we can use Indian models, and this can be derived from Bhagavad Gita. So verse 2.71, Vihaya kaman yah sarvan pumash charati nispriha nirmamo nirahankara sa shanti madhigachati. You can see that Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Moh is captured in that verse. So without these, you attain peace. How do you do that? By following Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, or Jnana Yoga. The Karma Yoga model can be captured again by, are you performing Swadharma? If no, then you get Pap. Is your intention Sakama? If yes, then you go on the life after life cycle. But if you do it Nishkam, now you are on polishing yourself. You are removing the dust that is settled on the self. So, a simple diagrammatic representation of the basic ideas in the Bhagavad Gita. So, this is the model of Karma Yoga. And we have many such models. So now I have 1 minute to talk about Daivik and Asurik Sampada. So there are, in the first 3 verses in chapter 16, Sri Krishna gives us 26 Daivik Sampada. And 9 of them are negating some constructs. So Bhaya, Abhayam, Dama is controlling, Ahimsa, Himsa, Ahimsa, Krodha, Akrodha, Apaishunam, Aloluptam, Loluptam, Aloluptam, Achapalam, Adroha, Na Atimanita. And then there are 17 positive constructs. Sattva Samsuddhi, Jnani Yoga Vyavasthiti, Danam, Yagya, Swadhyaya, Tapa, Arjavam, Satyam, Tyaga, Shanti, Daya, Mardavam, Hri, Teja, Kshama, Dhriti, Shaucham. So think about Hri, that's Lajja. That's a Daivik Sampada. Just knowing this helped me write a paper that Lajja cannot be a negative construct. And Lajja is also the name of Devi. And we also, in Durga Sapsati, read, Ya Devi Sarvabhutesu Lajja Rupena Samsita, Namastasyai, 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 Namo Namo. So how can Lajja be negative? So if you reflect on it, and I've done some reflection and written 4 papers, Lajja is actually like the superego of the West, even better. It helps us decide what we should not do, we should not do, what we should do, we should do. And Lajja guides us with that. I will not get into the other constructs. So I'm going to go to the, so briefly on the Asuri Sampada, Dambha, Darpa, Atimana or Abhimana, Krodha, Parushyam, and Ajnana. So in India, in Indian worldview, we always integrate the positive and negative. And here is a beautiful word, Pratipaksha Bhav. So positive psychology, I mean, think about the insight. Adi Shankar talks about it. Cultivating the opposite of something you don't like. So if you don't want to be angry, you got to cultivate akrodha. If you don't want hinsa, you got to cultivate ahimsa. So thinking about the opposite, cultivating the opposite helps us get rid of it. So Daivik and Asuri Sampada, the 5 Asuri and the 26 Daivik, we need the 26 to get over the 5. So that's why we cannot only think about positive psychology. We have to think about negative psychology. But in the Indian worldview, they are integrated. They are not left aside. So to summarize, positive worldview allows to get away from the deficit model of self. So our self is not deficit. I am Purna. This was a verse that was sung in the prayer. Purnamada, Purnamidam, Purnat, Purnamudachyate, Purnasya Purnamadaya, Purnameva Vashishyate. I am complete to begin with. Everything I buy, I should stop buying. I should control my need. I should have me. I am not the clothes I wear. I am not the person, the class I teach, the subject I teach, neti. That leads to understanding the self. Indigenous constructs and models enrich the literature. So Lok Sangra, working for common good, is a sadhana. Like I said, Karma Yoga. So this goes beyond the Parma model. Sadhana is self-focused excellence. Competition creates jealousy. But our worldview is focused on doing sadhana, bettering ourselves by cultivating the positive qualities. Transcendence is implicit. Self is Atman. So I have to do neti. Transcendence does not mean basically means understanding the true self. And Daivik and Asurik Sampada provide an integrated theory of positive psychology. I'm sorry I could not get, but I can share with people who are interested in some of the articles I have written that will provide you some understanding. But my message today is we need to remember the positive worldview that We are grounded in, and we need to build on indigenous constructs. And there is tremendous value, because think about it, if everybody becomes a karma yogi, will there be conflict in organizations? If I am mellowed and matured, if you want something, I'll say, be my guest, take it. I can do with less. That behavior can change the organization, can create a different organization, can create a different society. So if you say, why is the society not doing well? Well, honestly, the society is doing well. We have produced the most geniuses in the field of spirituality in the world. That's our specialty. Not only a chaiwala becomes prime minister, a beaniwala becomes a saint. So Nisargadatta Maharaj continued to run his beanie shop and make beanies. It did not he did not lose his enlightenment. So the country is doing well. We need to build on our culture to do better. We had a phase where we were, told we were not good enough, and that phase is past, and now we can change that. So that's, as a cultural researcher, I do like to look at the cultural roots, and I find that positive psychology is part of our culture. So sorry about being 5 minutes over time. Thank you very much. I'll be happy to take questions, but if we don't have time, that's okay.
We would like to express our gratitude to Professor Dharm P S Bhawuk for such an informative session. I'm sure we all are feeling very positive now, sir. We heard about your book, Indian Psychology, Lessons from the Bhagavad Gita, but to hear about the various positive and negation of negative constructs from you has been an absolute delight. Thank you for highlighting the importance of Indian culture and how it stands out from the Western approaches by capturing the idea of positive psychology and emotional intelligence for a much longer time. We have a much better understanding of the various concepts, including Purusharth, Ahimsa, Sat, Asat, Sadhana, and Tapas. I'm sure we all have so much to take away from this addressal, and we'll be definitely working on it. Once again, thank you so much, sir. I, on behalf of KJ Somaiya Institute of Management, thank you all for taking out your valuable time to attend this session. After an absolutely enlightening and meaningful keynote address, we'll be starting with the workshop at 3 p.m. today.